Thank you. My firm is a bit unique. It's not like most that you've come across in the past, but in short summary, we build credit, we fix it, and we protect it. So building credit, basically how we do that is we started finding people that were moving here from abroad that didn't have any credit. We started working with athletes when they first get drafted. Then we started working with entertainers when they start to make it. Most people don't realize that they have credit issues. And then even then, we found people that were going through divorces that maybe hadn't built up the credit in the past. So we started building credit for them. Then we also started repairing credit because we saw that a lot of people had late payments or blemishes or issues like that. We figured out all these different ways to remove the issues that were plaguing them. And then the last bit is we started protecting people's credit because we discovered years ago that credit monitoring doesn't actually protect you. And that's something that I'm going to cover towards the end of this seminar is what can you really do to prevent theft? And it's especially relevant since the whole Equifax hack. So that's essentially what we do and who we do it for. So a lot of our clients are famous and whatnot, but really about half of our clients are not famous at all, just regular, ordinary people. And I also have a book coming out, which is behind me here. Of course, I got to give my plug for it. My publisher wouldn't be happy if I didn't. But it's coming out in January, and Oprah's magazine is actually going to include an excerpt from it in her January episode on identity theft because that's super relevant these days. So what I want to get into today is all about how the credit system works. Credit is used for nearly every aspect of your life now. It obviously affects your mortgage rates and abilities, your credit cards, student loans, but now it's even seeping into your home insurance, your auto insurance, every aspect of how much you pay for things. And we found that the average person with the average credit profile is paying over the course of their lifetime roughly $500,000 more in interest over their lifespan just by having average credit. So we want you to have excellent credit. And excellent credit isn't something that's taught in school, and you definitely don't hear it at home because most people don't really know what it takes to get to the ideal credit profile. So we're definitely going to cover that today. But essentially, the reason why you've never learned that is because this whole system is like a game. And it's a game in which you're not meant to know the rules. They want you to not know how this system works so that then they can make as much money off of you as humanly possible. And with the way the credit system is set up now, it doesn't get into things like income, assets, or fame status or anything like that. They can now say, hey, even though you're wealthy and you can pay off things, you can buy something with cash. We're going to charge you extra because you don't have the right credit profile or the right credit score. So understand that a lot of what I'm going to tell you doesn't make any sense. It really shouldn't make any sense. But it's set up that way so that they can make as much money off of you as humanly possible. So as I mentioned, basically everything in your life comes down to what kind of credit profile and score you have. Now we're going to get into how this whole system kind of came about. There's 3 credit bureaus. I'm sure you've been hearing a lot of their names over the last few weeks, but there's Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Those are the 3 major credit bureaus. And they're not just here in America, they're worldwide. And what their purpose is really is not to protect you or protect your data. Their purpose is to collect data on you and then sell it to others. And we found that they even sell sometimes directly to thieves who don't want to figure out how to hack them. They just literally want to buy the data and then use it. So remember that they're not really there to protect you, and that's why they didn't do a very good job of protecting your data. to begin with, because they weren't really in that business. They were in the business of just collecting information on you and selling it. Now, a separate company from them came in, and their purpose was to analyze the data on those credit reports and then give you a score. And that company is called FICO, which stands for the Fair Isaac Corporation. So they've been around since the 1950s, and they came up with a top secret model that would analyze the data on your credit report and then give a score. Well, that's the reason why you actually have 3 scores, is because there's 3 bureaus. They analyze the data and then they give you a score. So if you've gone on any credit monitoring website or Credit Karma or Credit Sesame and you see 1 score, know that there's 2 others, and you're not getting the whole picture unless you're looking at all 3. So FICO came into existence to just give bankers and lenders a real quick way to just say this person's creditworthy or not, and they give you that to you in a numerical score. So obviously things changed since the credit crisis happened back in 2008. Lending institutions became very, very, very picky with who they were going to lend to, where before, back when I was a banker for about 10 years, we literally would give money to anyone that could prove that they were a living, breathing human being. And we'd give them up to like $1 million to buy a house. So obviously that had to change. And the end result is now the pendulum has swung completely the other way, where now they want you to show that you were, you had a good report card in the 3rd grade, and that you played well with others, and that you shared your toys. They really want to get that in depth before deciding whether to lend to you. And that's the reason why. So what makes up a FICO score was actually top secret from the 1950s until the 1990s. And they still make tweaks to it every now and then. And so what I'm going to give you is the very latest. This is the most up-to-date, what makes up your FICO score. The most important thing is that you pay your bills on time. And that makes sense, right? But that's only 35% of your FICO score, is whether you pay your bills on time. The other 65% of your FICO score has absolutely nothing to do with whether you pay your bills on time. And that trips up a lot of people. So we're going to get into what covers the rest of it that you can do, because most people assume, hey, I pay my bills on time, I must have an excellent FICO score and a great credit profile. That's not entirely true. So the next 30% are your credit card usage. So that, and this is really tricky, but essentially they're looking at each credit card or department store card that you have and what percentage of each card you've used. So for example, if you have like a Macy's credit card that has a $500 limit and you charge up $400 of it, your credit score is severely impacted. Even though you can have another credit card that has a $10,000 limit and it doesn't have any balance on it whatsoever, your credit score is still going to plummet by as much as 30% because of that one credit card is showing a very high percentage. And remember, they don't take income, they don't take assets, they don't take fame status or anything like that into equation. They are strictly looking at per card, what is the percentage of usage. And another key thing on that is you may say, hey, I pay off my balances in full each month, but they only report the balances every 30 to 45 days. So that means, today's the 4th of October. If you were to charge up that Macy's card with the balance today, and then they reported the balance tomorrow, and you pay it off on the 15th, if someone were to pull your credit report November 1st, they're going to see that you're near maxed out. And that's going to negatively impact your credit. So remember that it's only every 30 to 45 days. If you're going to use your credit for like a loan or a line, you need to keep that in the back of your mind, that 30 to 45 days in advance before applying for that loan, you should zero out your credit card balances and then refrain from using them so that you have the optimal FICO score. That's the best thing you can do. So the next biggest chunk is 15% of your FICO score comes down to the length of credit history that you have. And what they're looking for are accounts that you have for a very, very long period of time that looks best. And you can think of these as like relationships. You want someone that can vouch for you, that's known you for a long time. So if you have a friend that you've known for 15 years, that person's word is going to speak much louder than someone you've known for a year. And my best advice on that is, if you have an account that's been open a long time, but you don't really use it, you have to use it on a regular basis, because then it shows that, hey, not only have I known this person for a very long time, but I also keep in regular communication with them, and they can vouch for me. And they say I do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it. So that's a key part of managing your FICO score and your profile, is keeping those accounts open and using them on a regular basis. One tip I have for that is, if you have a credit card that you don't really use much, or a department store card, something like that, you can tie it to something small that's recurring on a monthly basis, like a Netflix account, a Hulu, Spotify, music streaming, something like that, and then have it automatically zero out at the end of the month. Keep that credit card in the drawer. You don't even have to carry it around with you. And it's keeping your credit profile very, very, very healthy. So 10% of your FICO score comes down to the variety of credit. They want to see that you can handle multiple different types of credit, that you can handle a mortgage, you can handle a credit card, you can handle a student loan. They want to see that you can handle a whole wide variety of things and what's thrown at you. And then the final 10% is inquiries or new debt acquired. Most people lose sleep over having someone pull their credit, and they really shouldn't, because it's extremely rare that we will ever see anyone's credit impacted by the number of inquiries they have. And that's because the lending institutions want to be able to lend to you, and they've reduced the percentage of impact that inquiries will have as a result. And they've even created 4 different categories that don't really count, essentially. So with these 4 different categories, you can have your credit pulled for an unlimited number of times for that purpose within a 45-day period. And then they only count as just one inquiry. So for example, if you're applying for a mortgage, you could apply with every mortgage bank in town for a period of 45 days. You could have 100 inquiries, and they're going to lump all of those inquiries into just one. And one inquiry typically impacts your score by 0 points. It's seriously nothing to lose sleep over. Another reason that you can do an unlimited number of inquiries is a rental report. So if you're applying for a rental apartment, you can apply for as many rentals as you want within a 45-day window, and they will only count as one inquiry. The next category are student loans. If you apply for a student loan, unlimited number of student loans, one inquiry. And the final reason are car loans. They want you to shop around for these things. So car loans, student loans, rental applications, mortgages. You can apply an unlimited number of times, and it will only count as one inquiry in 45 days. That doesn't mean you could apply for a mortgage and then a car loan and then a student loan. It doesn't work that way, but it's by group. So now the FICO score range goes all the way down from 300 on the low end, which 300 is so bad, like their mother hangs up on them when they call. Nobody has a 300 score. Absolutely nobody has a 300. On the opposite end is an 850 score. So an 850 score just doesn't exist. If someone had an 850 score, like God would come down from the heavens and etch their credit score on a tablet. It's carried down a mountain, praised by everybody, and it glows. Like, nobody has an 850 score. And if you're getting a score that is above that, like there's all these kind of different models, it's not really a FICO score. And in fact, lending institutions don't want you to have access to the same credit reports that they use. And each of the three credit bureaus recently paid a fine of $25 million apiece for falsely advertising that the credit reports and scores that they are giving you as a consumer are the exact same as what they sell to the lending institutions. That's not true. So I'm going to tell you a secret. This is not written on any of the slides, but this is the one website that consumers can go and get access to the same credit reports that lending institutions use with all three FICO scores. So I'm going to give you a second to pull out a pad and pen. It is www.itdoesn'tfriggin''exist.com, because it doesn't exist. They don't want you to have access to these reports. So one way that you can get to it, and I covered in my book in much more detail, but if you find like a banker, you want to ask them and befriend them and say, I need a copy of my real credit report. They're not supposed to give it to you, but if you make friends with them, they will. We allow people to purchase them on our website, which is just that cost, because we believe consumers do have the right to know. Just don't tell the credit bureaus that I do that. But essentially, these reports are really, really, really top secret, and they don't want you to know. And they look very different than the reports that you can get as a consumer. But now let's say you get a hold of this real credit report. Know that the FICO score range, again, goes from 300 to 850. What's considered good is anything above a 740. That is now considered an A+ credit score, is a 740. If you want to get like a jumbo mortgage, which in some place like New York City is anything over the massive amount of $417,000, you must have a 700 FICO score, which here in Manhattan will get you a cardboard box on the corner. But they consider that a jumbo mortgage, and you must have a 700 score or they won't talk to you. No matter how much money you have in the bank, no matter how good the rest of your information looks, how much money you make, they won't talk to you if you have less than a 700. And in order to get a premier credit card, one with rewards and miles and things like that, they want to see a 700 score. And to do things like get a black card, they generally want you to have like an immaculate 760 score. But if you're above a 740, you're generally good to get anything you want. But now I mentioned that there's three different credit bureaus. So therefore you have three different FICO scores. So which one are lending institutions using? And they use this very, 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 very precise mathematical formula in which they pick the one in the middle. That's really it. So if you had a 660 with one bureau, a 700 with a second bureau, and a 740 with a third, so a 660, 700, 740, they literally just pick the one in the middle and say 700 is you, no matter how far that range varies. And the range varies pretty often. Because one bureau will get information that's different than another one. So remember that they're always picking the one in the middle if you're applying for something major like a mortgage, or if you are applying for a car loan, they may pick one bureau or they may pick two bureaus. We don't know. So you also may want to ask them which credit bureau they're going to be using when they're going to do this. But for a mortgage, they always just pick the one in the middle, and for a lot of different lines of credit, they do that. So what is the perfect credit profile? The perfect credit profile is one that has between 5 and 7 trade lines. This has now been recently updated. And a trade line is anything that reports to the credit bureaus, like a mortgage, car loan, whatever. And you want to have a variety of them. So you want to have a different type. You want to have a mortgage. You want to have a student loan. You want to have an auto loan. You want to have all those different types of things. You also want to have low balances on your credit cards. Everyone always asks me, what's the rule of thumb? Because they read all these different things all over. What percentage of my credit card should I use? And the answer is anything above 0 begins to negatively impact you. The closer you are to the limit, the more it negatively impacts you. So if you're at 1% usage, it has like no impact. If you're at 90% usage, it's really killing your score. So I recommend that everyone use your credit as much as you want. Just know that 45 days before you're going to apply for credit, you should zero it out, all your revolving credit cards, and don't use them until after you apply for the loan. That's the best thing that you can do. Now, in addition, I mentioned that a good practice is that if you have a credit card that you haven't used in a while, you should use it at some point in time just to keep it active and keep that relationship going. Now, some of you may have gone through a divorce, and it's key to note that when you go through a divorce and you get a divorce decree that states, hey, this person's going to pay this and this person's going to pay that, that does not absolve you from the responsibility of making sure that the debt is paid on time. Your creditors don't care if it didn't work out. They're just going to say, I want my money and I want it on time. So, and along those lines, if you co-sign for a debt, you're signing for it. You're saying, I'm responsible for the payments. I'm going to make sure they're made on time. So you need to make sure that those debts are paid. And if you're co-signing for it, you probably should make sure that the payments are made on your own, and then you collect the money from the person. Otherwise, don't co-sign for it, because it will trip up your credit at some point in time. So that's what the perfect credit profile looks like. 5 to 7 trade lines open. The longer the better that they're open. A variety of them, and then keep your balances low on your revolving credit card debt. So we got time for just a couple more things. One is, I mentioned before you apply for a mortgage, zero out your debt. That's the best thing that you could do to prepare for a mortgage or a home loan. Don't close accounts that are that you've had open for a while, because then you lose the benefit of that relationship or that friendship. Even if you say, I don't really use that card, I don't like that store anymore, that doesn't matter. Collection accounts are the second to last thing I want to cover, because they are massive these days. 35% of all Americans have a collection on their credit report right now. And these are not deadbeat people. These are savvy people. These are people that pay their bills on time, make money, but typically how it happens is, let's say you go to the doctor for something, and they do a test. That results in a bill to the insurance company, so that and you know what insurance companies really hate doing more than anything on God's green earth is paying a claim. They hate it when you make a claim against the insurance company and they're not going to pay it in full. So the end result is, maybe your doctor and the insurance company are fighting over who's going to get paid how much. If there's any balance in the middle, you are technically responsible for it. And that could be for $50. It could be for $100. We see them for tiny amounts. But know that it doesn't matter how much that collection was for, as far as how it impacts your credit. It's all about whether you have a collection on there at all. So the way that a collection impacts your FICO score, and this is massive, it can be anywhere from 50 to 120 point hit to your FICO score by having a collection. And you may not receive a phone call, you may not be notified, any of this, it doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you get a collection on your credit report. So how it directly impacts your FICO score is, again, it doesn't matter how much money the collection was for. It doesn't matter when it originated, even. It could have happened 2 years ago, or it could have happened 5 years ago. And it doesn't matter like why it originated. It could have been a medical collection, it could have been a cable bill collection, it could have been for any reason. The only thing that matters to your FICO score is when they last reported the information to the credit bureaus. And what makes them update the credit bureaus is if you pay it. So paying a collection can often be the wrong thing to do. And I know that sounds very counterintuitive, but the way that I explain it is, it's like the last time I made my wife upset about something. It doesn't matter when I did this activity that made her upset. It's about when she last remembered that I did it. So if you poke the bear and you remind a collection company that you owed them money or did whatever by paying it, you could be lowering your credit score by 50 to 120 points. And I cover that in a blog post that I believe is still up on our website, and it's also in the book too, about all the different strategies to deal with collections, because this inevitably is going to impact everyone at some point. Right now, it's on 35% of Americans' credit reports. So in the last couple of minutes we have, I just wanted to give you a tip on how to protect your credit truly, where there's a lot of misinformation going on about should you do this, should you do that. Starting with the Equifax hack, do not register for credit monitoring through Equifax for many reasons, but one of them is because their credit monitoring is only covering one bureau. Even if it's free, one bureau isn't enough. You need to look at all three if you're going to do it that way. The best step that you can do is to put on a security freeze. A security freeze is where you're telling the credit bureaus, do not sell my data without my permission. It is a lengthy 23-step process to place a freeze with all three credit bureaus, because you have to do them independently, each credit bureau one at a time. And then each time you want to use your credit, you have to go back to those bureaus and unlock it that way. And why is it so complicated and complex? Is because the credit bureau's main purpose is to collect data on you and then sell it. And if your credit is frozen, they can't do it, which is why many of you haven't heard about a security freeze before, because they don't want you to know that this exists, and they've made it intentionally complex because they didn't really want to give you an option to opt out of having your data sold, even though you never wanted to do business with them in the first place and never gave them permission. So that's one of the services we actually offer as a business, is to manage the security freeze for people that say, I want this protection, but I don't want to have to do it. I'm not going through that process. Many people try to do it and then they can't do it. And you can go to my website to learn more about it. But essentially, this is something you could do on your own. The way to do it is to Google the name of the credit bureau and then security freeze, and you'll be able to see instructions for how to do it. So like Equifax security freeze. Just Google that and it will walk you through the steps and the processes. They'll give you some PIN codes and you need to keep them safe somewhere, not on a computer, and then keep them handy when you want to access your credit. And usually will take a few days on your own to kind of unlock them, but you definitely don't want to lose your PIN codes or however it's assigned, because then it's a real whole headache to get it unlocked, and you have to write to them and send proof of your identity and all these other things. It's really, 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 really a huge mess. So anyhow, my name's Anthony Davenport again. The company is Regal Credit Management. My book is called Your Score, and it's available on pre-order through Amazon. So I'm going to open it up to questions now.
Thanks, Anthony. I see that we did have some questions come in, and I'll remind everyone, if you have a question, you can use the chat box or email info@savvyladies.org. The first question here is just asking if you can repeat how to get the hidden credit report that you spoke about.
Yeah, so the best thing to do is to befriend a banker. You need to go and ask them to pull a copy of the credit report and then provide it to you. Again, every bank's policy is not to give it to you, and they sign an agreement with the credit bureaus not to release it. But if you get to know a banker, they will give you access. If you don't know a banker that'll do that, the second best way to do this is to contact a real estate agent that you're friends with. And there's like 10,000 just in New York City alone, so you can find one easy. They get or give business to bankers. So if you go to them, they can get access to a mortgage banker who will often be able to give you the credit report. And I know because I used to be one. I was a banker for 10 years. And if a real estate agent said, I need you to run a credit report for someone and give it to me, we would do it. So that's the best way that you can do it.
Okay, thanks. Another question for you is, I've heard that one late credit card payment can really affect your credit score. And I've also heard that you can contact your credit card company and try and get it removed from your record if you've never had any previous issues. Is that true?
So what's unfair is that someone that's never had any blemishes or late payments or issues with their credit, when they do get a late payment or collection or something, it impacts them far worse than someone else. And I don't even have the time to explain how that makes sense. Plus, I don't know how it makes sense, but it's kind of like if you know someone who is always irresponsible, when they do something irresponsible, people just look at them and say, well, that's kind of what they do. Where if you've never had a late payment, you have one, it's a crushing blow to your credit score because it's a sign of like financial distress. So that's the reason why one single late payment can have an impact. Can you contact the company? Yes, you really can, and you should. And the way to do it is not online. They will often funnel you to just, hey, just click here and dispute it. If you're ever directed to do that, don't do it because that just means that they're going to allow a computer to handle the dispute for you. And that computer is not going to do any real research. You really have to dig in hours on the phone, fighting them, going through different levels of people, getting up to the management level, and really pushing to get these removed. Um, Again, that's one of the services we offer because most people say, I don't want to have to figure all that out. I'm not a mean person. I don't want to be mean on the phone. But you can definitely get them removed. It is absolutely within their power to change the way that they're reporting.
All right, thank you. Another question we have is I get notices from my credit card company that I can increase my credit limit. I always thought it was a way for them to get me to spend more money, but is this something that I should pursue? And are there any bad consequences to raising my limit?
That's a good question. So the reason why they're looking to do it, you're right, is because they want you to spend more money with them. And their odds are they're looking at it and saying, hey, this person has lines of credit with other creditors and they're maybe using that one, but not ours. So maybe we need to entice them by telling them, hey, they can go ahead and spend more. It's not a bad thing to do because then your utilization is likely lower. So if your limit goes from $2,000 to say $4,000, and then you use $500 of it, it's now an even smaller percentage of that limit. So I recommend that if they offer it to you, take it. There's no harm in it.
Okay, that's good to know. And another question we have is about medical collections. So
Mm-hmm.
I had minor emergency surgery less than 6 months ago that my health insurance only partially covered. I'm now left with large medical bills. I thought I would have some more time to put together my own type of repayment plan, but I just received my first collections notice for one part of the bill 2 weeks ago. What should I do about this? And are you suggesting I don't pay it?
Right. So now collections are a tricky situation. It's actually an entire chapter in my book because there's so many different ways to deal with them. But in your situation, what I would do is I would look at that collection notice and look at it front and back. You want to see if they stated they've already reported it to the credit bureaus or if they will in a short time period. If that fails, just call them and say, are you reporting this to the credit bureaus? If they haven't reported it to the credit bureaus, my advice is to work out some sort of repayment plan with them. These companies will take virtually anything. If you owe them $10,000, you may be able to pay them $100 a month for a long, long time. But if they're already reporting it to the credit bureaus, my advice is call them up and offer some money. You're probably going to have to pay all of it at that point in exchange for them deleting it from the credit report. That's the best thing to do. But if they've already reported to the credit bureaus, my advice is just try to dispute it, make them prove it, and don't pay it because it can lower your score by a significant amount of money, unless they're willing to remove it from the record altogether.
Okay. And we also had another question about not realizing that medical collections are affecting your credit score? And I know that this is a question we've seen before and people are a little confused about it. Can you just talk a little more about that?
So about how medical collections are not reporting, or like, are you referring to the news that maybe medical collections wouldn't be counted in the FICO scores?
Yes, that. Yep.
Yes. Right. So this isn't going to make any sense either, but um, FICO, the company that creates the scoring algorithm, came out and said, great news, everyone. We are going to stop counting medical collections into your FICO score. And everyone was like, yay, oh my God, that's amazing news. Here's the problem. FICO comes out with a new model roughly every 2 years, but the banks and lending institutions are extremely slow at adapting and moving onto it. So if you want to know, like, your local mortgage bank, what year model of FICO score they're using, you're thinking, okay, it's 2017. Maybe they're using the 2016 model or something like that. No, they are using the model from 2004. Yeah, they're using something from the George Bush years. That is how quickly they move and adjust to things. So right now, medical collections very much are impacting your FICO score. And if you wait another 13 years, maybe they will start using the model that was just released that doesn't take medical collections into account.
Okay, great. Thanks for explaining that. Okay, so those are the questions we have. Did you have contact information here?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So our main office is in Manhattan on 6th and 55th. If you would really like to get in depth with your own personal credit profile, as I mentioned, you can go to our website, regalcredit.com. You can purchase a credit report either for yourself or for a married couple. It's the real deal report. The fee is just cost. So $50 for an individual, $75 for a married couple. And then on the website, you can request a consultation with a certified FICO professional, and one of the team of experts here will walk you through it. And it doesn't cost anything to walk you through it, just to say, hey, listen, this is your profile. It looks good. It looks sexy. Or this is what you can do to improve upon it. And if there's a service that would benefit you, we'll tell you about it and say, this is what you can do.
Okay, great. And for everyone who didn't have a chance to write this down, we'll be sending this out in a follow-up email. And I see we just had a comment, very helpful webinar. So with that, I want to thank you, Anthony, for a great presentation today. Thanks for everyone who joined us and asked questions, and thanks for taking the time to answer them. Thanks again, Anthony. It was really, really excellent. Thanks for explaining everything very clearly.
Thank you so much for including me. Take care.
Bye-bye.